It is impossible to give an overview of Paideia, or of its primary source in Plato's Republic. This is, according to many, the educational masterpiece of all times, and we do well as theological educators to engage with it. This video will simply present the centrality of character education in Plato's vision, as probably one of the most complete, influential sources in our culture, and one that is rich with things to reflect on. So point number one. For Plato, what really counts is the soul. In a sense, Paideia is the most humanistic of all educational outlooks, as it seeks out the heart of what it means to be human, and it starts from there. The constant themes that we find in the Republic are that the soul is in danger, that the soul is the highest interest of man. We even find a general principle of conversion, where the soul must be turned to the light and led out of the lowest stages into its essential forms of existence. Socrates, for example, is quoted as saying, "All I do is go around and persuade old and young among you not to give too much attention to your bodies or to your money, but to the perfection of your souls." So in this vision, useful knowledge is not the end of education, as much as making the best of the whole man. To order your life, to order the life of others around you, there needs to be a clear pattern in the soul that serves as a guide. Second key feature, the soul has an ideal shape. So it not only is the most important thing, but it has an ideal shape. And the word ideal, of course, is important in Plato's thinking. This ideal shape of the soul corresponds with happiness, with human flourishing, and collectively, it corresponds to a healthy democracy. So what Plato says is there is a law within our souls. And justice means harmonization, an agreement in the soul with this law. So to train the soul in obedience to this ideal code is simply to follow a natural path of man by doing what reaches in harmony with the nature of the universe. In Greek terms, the Greek word for this, a perfect happiness, is of course eudaimonia, the happiness of the human flourishing. It's not just personal happiness though, it's collective health as well. Virtue and character were seen in this vision of Paideia as the foundation of the polis, of the community, of all communitarian, of all political life. Plato taught, for example, that community is only possible among good men, for only the good is what binds together. He writes of this in the Symposium. So character is most important, so the soul is the most important thing. The soul has an ideal shape. And thirdly, one of the most important features of the soul is character. And character in Plato's vision is expressed in adhering to a set of virtues to achieve what is called in Greek terms arete. Character formation, therefore, in this overall vision is really seen as the only type of education that deserves the name of culture, which is the meaning of the word paideia, culture. And the type of which Plato uses a physical metaphor of molding character. So he uses this image of character that needs to be molded. It is the result, he writes in the Republic, of a constant effort of all Greek poets and thinkers to find and state a standard of human character. The effort was essentially an educational activity, especially in a nation as philosophical as the Greeks. It brought about a foundation of the concept of culture in a higher sense. So these qualities of character were also called the virtues, or the excellences. Virtues, prime among which we find courage, prudence, justice, and piety. These four in particular are excellences of the soul, just as strength, health, and beauty are excellences of the body. So as the body has excellences that can be molded and shaped, so the soul has excellences that can be molded and shaped. So the end of character education is virtue, called arete. This is the expression of the harmonious, of the balanced life, mixed and lived with moderation between the excesses of self-repression and extreme exhibition on the other. It's the excellence of all human behavior, including moral behavior. So, fourthly, the soul, therefore, is at the center. The soul has an ideal. The shape, the soul can be molded to the ideal. Fourthly, the role of education. What is the role of education in this particular vision? The role is that the soul actually needs to be cared for, nurtured, molded, to use again this analogy, through education. The soul is capable of receiving form and order. And this is one of the simplest ideas of Paideia, although it's a very rich educational outlook. One of the basic, simplest ideas is that the human self is a living being, and it requires a certain environment and educational input to grow properly into what it can be in terms of character and virtue. Education is nothing but a system of providing proper nurture for the growing of the soul. Now, the soul cannot be left to itself because Plato believes the soul will never stay still. It will either improve or worsen. If improperly nourished, the soul will fall asleep, it will go into vice. So it needs to be continually fed and nurtured and molded toward the positive traits of virtue and character. So character must be educated. The care of the soul has to do with the care of the knowledge and values, what was called phronesis, or practical wisdom, together with truth, called aletheia. So education has a central role in all this. And finally, fifth point, the soul is important, it's central, there's an ideal shape, it can be molded, the soul can be changed, education has a primary role in all this, and fifthly, there are ways to intentionally educate character. This does not just happen on its own, and much of Plato's Republic is actually devoted to exploring the ways, the means, the tools by which you can educate character in the soul. This is virtually about soul crafting. There's a very strong attention given to Plato by this. He regards, for example, the formation of character in early childhood as much more important in education than the instruction of intellect. And we see very clearly the importance of this, again, looking a little closer at what he says about children. He says in educating them, the main purpose is actually the formation of their character. Once the character is formed in children, this does not go away, and it will form the basis for the superstructure of manhood. So in terms of means and methods, how was character educated in children in 4th century Athens in Plato's idea? Well, there were three tools, just to give you an example of how practical this can be. Plato saw the three tools of education of children were literature, music, and gymnastics. That was what was in the curriculum of what we would call primary and maybe early secondary school in Athens. First of all, literature. For Plato, it doesn't really matter if the literature was actually historically true. What really matters is that the literature represented heroes of virtue. And so the young Athenians would find heroic figures in the literature that they would want to emulate. They would want to imitate their character traits. Character traits such as honor to parents, love of fellow citizens, courage, truthfulness, obedience to authorities, and crucially, self-control. Protagoras said, what we do is we put into their hands the works of the great poets, which contains many admonitions, many tales, and praises of the worthy men of old. These the young child is required to learn by heart in order, crucially, that he may imitate them and desire to become like them. So literature was crucial to give ideas of heroes that would want to be imitated in their good character. And of course, there's bad heroes as well that would be studied and pointed out the vices of those bad characters. And you certainly would not want to be like that. Music was the second element of the curriculum of children. Music as expressing qualities of character such as harmony, such as rhythm, that would then develop the soul. It would infuse the soul with the spirit of order. It would develop a true love of true beauty. And so music was seen as a crucial element in the character education of Athenian children. And thirdly, gymnastics. Again, also designed to affect the soul and character through rigor instead of pampering, through activities that required the character traits of discipline, through the appreciation of harmony in gymnastics, through the virtue of strength, beauty, self-control. So this is an initial sketch of Paideia. It is, in short, an educational venture aimed at nourishing the soul and building character. The outcomes are human flourishing, personal happiness, and the enhancement of well-being in democracy. The means for Paideia are varied, and here we've only seen the very early stages of training, which was, of course, in Plato's vision, then followed by adult training, where reason is alert, and even advanced training, where the soul discovers truth through philosophy. But throughout, we see character education as being the key feature. We will see more of this, what it actually means in practice, when we deal a little more with Aristotle. So in conclusion, what benefits can we draw as theological educators as we consider character education in our context? 4 final thoughts. First of all, methodologically. As we build our theologies of theological education, we might consider the ontological and anthropological vision of Plato, his vision of reality and his vision of human nature, where there are a set of fixed virtues and they match human nature, a key and lock combination. And we can see this vision of Plato, then we can consider sharing the same vision with Plato as an instance of common grace. And as such, we can build on it and perhaps engage with it. Secondly, it gives us perspective as theological educators. Looking back at the debates in 4th century Athens gives us a better perspective of the debates in higher education today, how they might be influencing us. If we are again in a season of sophistic education where academic knowledge, professional competence, and commodification of education are ruling, we might do well to join Plato and Aristotle in calling back the centrality of character. Thirdly, motivational. Plato spoke of educators who could make a choice to either cook dainties or that everyone likes, or to serve the bitter herbs that will not attract as much applause but contribute more significantly to overall health. So as we consider theological education and even accreditation standards, we might need to explore courageous ways to not just serve the dainties, but to go for the bitter herbs, to be innovative, to be even disruptive if necessary as we pursue strategies of character education that might not be on the radar screen of what is currently defined as quality in education. And fourthly, very practically, we might be creative in ways to use literature as Plato did in educating children. So the literature, for example, biblical stories or other stories to induce emulation and formation of character in our students. We might even consider music and even physical activity to intentionally shape our character and the character of the students that study with us. So this, in a nutshell, is Greek Paideia and character education.